Fog, nice. All right, so I know we talked about briefly. You, hold on, let me just cancel out of my league. You wanted to talk about Yone or like mid lane specifically? Because I went through your match history. I saw how you were kind of asking people to talk about Yone, and I can help you with that as well. But we can even go for a greater dive for your mid lane, just kind of giving you tips and
Yeah,
tricks. Or
I'm more just trying to learn mid lane in general. I had just gotten Yone whenever I was asking people about that on this account.
mm-hmm.
And I had never really played him on my main account all that much outside of like just when he came out, digging around in in practice tool and stuff.
All right, so I'm gonna DM you just quick my spreadsheet, which is kind of like what I'm just streaming right now. The spreadsheet should have a lot of resources, especially like gravitated towards mid lane.
Hmm.
The first page of the fundamentals are pretty much just going to be basic things that we want to think about dynamically, whether that's in game or out. Typically, you won't see a lot of links to guides, but from like coaching resources onwards, you will see mainly focused lane by lane guides. So when we're talking about mid lane as well, we talk about the fundamentals of it. So spacing, trading, and especially lane states. Lane states are ever so important for top lane and mid lane, solely because they are isolated lanes, meaning that it is a 1v1. Obviously, that is counting out the jungler, but for the majority of the game, it should be a 1v1 in a pure essence. And so there's a lot of different openings that you can have for mid lane. We can't all talk about it today, but I highly implore you just to kind of go through that video catalog if you can in coaching resources and
Hmm.
just see what works for you. As well, I have different tier lists from different pro coaches. So like Big RV2, LS. I know we don't typically like to use LS's word, but just in case, those resources are available for you. Did you have a
Gotcha.
VOD by any chance that you wanted just to kind of look at?
Let me look. I might. Um,
If you even
let's
want to go
see.
through that Yone VOD versus the Morgana,
Let me scroll down.
yeah, no worries.
Oh, yeah, that one was kind of shit. Um, yeah, we can take a look at that one.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, like how much do you know about mid lane? How proficient is your mid lane on a
Yeah,
scale of
mid
one to
lane's my
ten?
worst role for sure. Um,
So would we be looking like at a 3, a 4? I'd say 5
yeah,
is
probably.
general, like you know what to do in mid lane in terms of like I push the wave and then I roam.
Yeah, I would say probably like a 3 or 4.
3, 4, okay. And what role are you coming off of? AD, jungle?
Just like bot lane in general.
Okay.
AD and support.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Um,
typically the AD mains or even support players that just want to kind of play more mid just because they deal more damage than AD in like lane at least, and then you also can impact the greater map. So it's really efficient for climbing too, as opposed to like AD early on.
right. Um, so I guess a little bit more like what I'm trying to do. So like basically on my main account, I like just have tanked my MMR for seasons and seasons
Mm-hmm.
because I don't really like playing, or I didn't really like climbing all that much.
100%. I relate. Yep.
And specifically, I didn't like climbing in duo lanes because I wasn't playing with the duo most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I guess like basically what was going on is like I would do placements and then ended like, you know, bronze or something like that. And then
Right.
like I wouldn't play
And then
anymore.
not
So,
climb. Yep. Yep.
all
Yep.
right, you're placing an iron. And then I wouldn't play
Yep.
anymore. Like it just, I've tanked it for like several seasons in a row.
Yep, I mean that's exactly the same way that it's funny that you're saying this because like I'm rethinking, and that's exactly how I felt for when I started League as well. Where like maybe the first 2 to 3 seasons, we play those 10 provisions, and then we're like, shit, man, I didn't get gold for. Might not, there's no point in climbing. Or oh man, I didn't get plat off the rip, or I didn't get silver, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, and so you don't really see motivation because then there's also that factor where it's like, oh shoot, what happens if I continuously lose? Or what happens if there's miscommunication between, this person and this person, especially when we're talking about dynamic lanes like bot lane, whether that's AD or support. It's very important to have like that second voice. Just because sometimes in solo queue, communication is pretty much always going to be like kind of on the Bunsen burner in terms of like what people focus on.
Mhm.
All right. So for mid lane then, is there any reason why you're switching over to mid lane? Are there specific champions that you like to play? What's your traditional play style?
So I guess that's a combination of a bunch of different things. I want to switch to mid because one, it's the role that I know the least about, and like so that I can coach more effectively, I want to know the role better.
Okay.
Secondly, I want to play ranked this season in a fashion that like isn't just me soloing and fucking support, 'cause that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then lastly, like I kind of want to push myself to be more like of an aggressive player because I am more historically like a just kind of farm up and scale and try and like get damage in where I can, but I survive. Like my uh death count is really low, but my damage numbers usually aren't that high either.
Okay.
Unless for whatever reason I just get like fed and can blow up a team fight, and then that's a different thing. But
Is that a
um,
mental thing that's kind of blocking you from kind of going into those trades? Are you just purposely not trying to die to mitigate stuff, or do you not know the limits of your champion? What do you think is like kind of contributing to that? Because I will say,
um,
majority of the time when people kind of play that playstyle where there's, it's like the if I do, I think it's the phrase is like if I do, I'm damned or something like that. Is it like that
right.
mentality?
I think so. I think a large part of it is like when I started playing, I was playing with people who were significantly more experienced than I was. And so a lot of like my learning curve was just like, hey, just don't fucking die and we'll figure it out, you know?
Right.
And so my playstyle kind of evolved around that. Uh, and it's weird because like I know macro and like even champion micro fairly well. Um, but like my playstyle while I was learning was not centered around that, you know?
Right.
Um, so I think a lot of it was just kind of like forming those habits of like just being safer, staying alive, and then like uh, pumping in damage where I could versus like taking those trades where I, you know, taking those 60/40s or whatever, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh,
I'm so sorry if you already repeated it, but your playstyle in mid lane is like super aggro. You want to be in their faces. You want to like have that aggression, but at the same time have escape. Is that kind of what I'm getting at?
yeah, yeah. So that's why like predominantly I've been trying to move more towards champions like Silas, Akali,
Right.
Yone, Talon, LeBlanc, stuff like that that have a little bit more just skill pressure and aggressive like outplay ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually going to mention that as well. I think part of it too is like I don't take aggressive trades because I'm just like worried about getting outplayed, and like I won't learn how to outplay that if I don't try, kind of thing.
Do you not play control
So
mages?
what was that?
Do you not play control mages? I'm going through your history here, and I'm not sure if it's because you don't own any on this account, but do you not play control mages? It's like Cinder,
Um,
Oriana, Veigar, like things like that.
so I I play Vagar and I have that on this account. I like Oriana. I don't play her all that often, but I do like her. I don't have her unlocked on this account.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Syndra, I don't play very much. Like I have a bit of experience on her, but not a lot. Let me look at what other control mages. Um, so
While you're looking, I just want to ask about your general playstyle as well.
mhm.
So in terms of like in the mid lane, right? Would you rather set up for jungle so jungle can also help you in the form of like a 2v1 scenario, or would you rather they set you up? Because the way that your match history is looking like is you play a very very aggro lane style, so you're playing some of these assassins, you're playing kind of up in your face champions that like to go in but also like to have some kind of layer of defensibility. Would you rather play some kind of hard CC form that still does immense damage and can set up jungle to kind of roam more efficiently, or
I would rather play something that would allow me to set up and go help other lanes rather than try to focus on mine, I guess.
okay.
Um, Mainly because like I'm basically running this account so I can solo climb.
Okay, do you
Um,
mind if I give you like one champion right now off the top of my head that
yeah,
probably
shoot,
fits your playstyle? I'm
go
not
for it.
trying to like mansplain or anything like that, but I really feel like the way that you're playing these assassins, you could easily play Lissandra the exact same way, and Lissandra would immediately fit your playstyle. You can go aggro. You also have that defensibility and either using your ult on yourself or even Eing away. It provides a lot of CC, so you can set up in team fights. You're super efficient in team fights as well, so even if you do get an assist, you're still dealing damage. You're still there, and that extremely mitigates that feeling that you have where if even if you don't die, even if you're not going net positive, you feel like you're doing nothing. Even if you
Mm.
have 2 deaths or 0 deaths or something like that. So Lissandra really fits like that niche playstyle that you have.
Yeah. So Lissandra and Annie were my go-to mid lanes if I had to fill mid on my other account.
Right?
Um, so like I actually have some experience with Lissandra. I used to play Lissandra top also, like way back when.
Right, right.
Um, but that was like before her passive update and all that stuff. So I mean, this was a while ago. But I mean, like to give you a better idea, like things I'm looking at playing more this season. Like I still want to try and keep a couple of more aggressive champions, like Akali and Yon,
Mm-hmm.
specifically, and Silas.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think like more focus on like Ari, uh, probably Oriana, um, Lissandra, and Cassio are the ones that I see right now.
Well, I mean, some of these champions as well that you're listing are not really champions that you want to blind so much. So, like, just kind of picking for yourself in terms of
Hmm.
draft. So, something like a Kali can easily be kind of punished. Again, if you're trying to play for flex, it's really good. But aside from that, if you're primarily picking mid, there's a lot of easy counters that just kind of leave you susceptible to that. If
Yeah,
you wanted to pick like blind too, I'm not sure how proficient you are on Victor. I know you mentioned the Veigar. Victor's also really good. Or he's a really good blind. Syndra's super efficient on blind too. Very rarely will she get punished, aside from like a Lucian mid, and then possibly Cassio. But those are like super super niche. Yeah, when we're talking about like draftability in the mid lane, we typically want to draft towards winning our lane, but providing kind of that snowball effect to the rest of the map. It's really efficient to focus on your lane and predominantly win it, and then win on the rest of the map, playing for jungle or jungle playing around you. And that's typically why those control mages are really really centered this patch, and they're extremely strong. But that's not to take out AD picks either. I think that you should learn Zed and you immediately should learn Lucian. I'm seeing Lucian in your match history. Lucian mid is just extremely broken right now. Provides so much damage. The Gale Force build can easily gap close on control mages as well. And there's really no answer to his flex potential because there's so many lanes that he can be played in.
yeah.
Do you mind sending me the Yone file, by the way?
Let me find that real quick.
No
I have
worries.
it downloaded. It's been a little while since I've sent a replay file.
No worries. So you're just gonna go find it in your documents.
Yeah, I'm on the way.
Yeah, you could also try to look at Aurelia as well. I'm not sure how proficient you are at Aurelia. Aurelia is like slightly better than Akali. Akali just has some matchups that are extremely unplayable for her or unfavorable, especially if champions play within the wave or play extremely back or have deterrence for her to engage. Akali's typically a champion that you want to play into like, excuse me, extreme squishies. So something like Lux, something even possibly like Annie, things that early on are not strong and that you can try to mitigate their snowball potential.
And it's just the raffle file, right?
Yep. I'd rather have you just we look over your VOD than like live play because live it's really hard to retain info, especially when someone's pretty much like third backseating gaming you, things like that.
Hmm. All right, it should be sent.
Yep. Right. So there's not going to be any audio on your end right now, but there should be audio when you see the VOD. Fix it up here. There we go. All right.
So another thing that like, I mentioned I had some bad habits that I was trying to break.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I definitely have a problem with is like, so again, I know macro really well. Like I can teach it to my guys and like focus on that. But when I'm in game, I have a really hard time like not focusing on my lane.
Why
Um,
are you trying to inspect other lanes or something or?
no, I mean like I get like in this like I guess a lot of it comes from just being unfamiliar with mid lane and the matchups and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just like more focused than I need to be on CS and like specifically the trades that are like potentially happening.
Do you use anything in terms of like programs like Blitz, U.GG,
No.
Professor? I would highly suggest loading up U.GG, especially if you're unfamiliar with matchups or if you're kind of getting new to the lane. Okay, this is super efficient here. Just don't have vision until right now of her. Okay. This is still really good here, what you're doing for Ezreal. Because now he's forced to back. Thing is, for this situation, because you're going to naturally go onto this line here, and I'm assuming you're going to kind of situate towards the lane, you still have a ward possible. Even though Ezreal spotted you out, he still had to indirectly run down, meaning that they are not covering their bot side.
Mm-hmm.
So like because Ezreal is appearing mid, that means that traditionally they're not going to do a 5 point, because then that would mean that the try is not covered at all unless they just want to drop a ward. And even then, you still can get a lot of info off of this. The main issue here is that we see Morgana here, and because we know that she basically has 3 routes here that she can take, we need to instantly collapse on at least 2 of these. That third one is whatever because we can't really change that, but at least if Ezreal's all the way past his line here, there's just no way to kind of catch up to him, meaning that there's no other form of like continuation on this play. So even if you did ignite, he still has the heal available, and he's still going to be able just to survive, even if it is like 20 HP. Because like regardless of whether or not you ignite or continue this fight, let's say you flash auto Q ignite or something like that, he's still going to be left with about maybe let's say 7% with the heal, and then he's forced to back regardless. Whether or not you make that play, he's going to be forced to back here. So what
Yeah.
you would naturally do is in this situation, you need to cover this area and you need to cross a Morgana. Because what we're going to do in a second here is we're going to kind of ignore that situation in general, and we're actually pathing away. And so because we are pathing away, at this point too, even if you wanted to collapse here onto that line, it's still really, really inefficient because Morgana still is able to cross that mid threshold and you have no true gap closer here.
Yeah.
Plus, assuming
Makes
that she
sense.
like started Q as well, because even if you flashed here, she could still Q you and you'd get stunned. I think she started W though because she just like tried
Yeah.
doing
And then I actually pat down because Lee Sin landed the Q. I was trying to hover Jin.
yeah. But even if Lee hits the Q here, like you see Hecarim on Hecarim's on your team here, so they're not really at danger, and like Lee Sin has a lot of escape here. Like it's whatever here for that play. Because
Yeah.
at most, it's a Yuumi base level Yuumi and base level Lee. Yuumi doesn't have heal. She started Q, and then Lee doesn't have W for like a sustainability fight either. Even if this guy procs his fucking Conqueror, he's going to get like 15.6 AD, and it's not going to mean much because then you also have like Big Daddy Hecarim here, and then he still has Fleet as well. So like these two are going to sustain more than Morgana here. But this should still be fine. Morgana's going to be forced to stay, I think, in a second. But this is really, really good what you did for Ezreal, kind of crossing him and continuing the play. Good, because again, he's forced to stay here. But let's assume that you did not want to go for this at all here. Let's say that we let Morgana kind of pass that mid threshold. You should instantly back. That way you can sync your back timer with the lane. And like, it doesn't seem like you're losing a lot here anyways, because eventually you're going to gain this back come level 3. But like early trades, and especially since she started W, means that you can't actively sit inside the wave. And so naturally she's going to have a really, really strong push because she's just going to situate the W onto like one set portion of the map. Whereas you
Yeah.
continuously have to kill like 1 minion to like 3 minions at a time with Q and empowered Q. But it's super niche. But yeah, I would just back here if I was Yone. Because like that 15% could mean a lot here. Oh, actually, she opts to stay. Or she opts to back, okay. Okay, you back as well. Nice, nice.
I don't think I do. I think I stay.
Oh, okay. You regen it anyways, but again, that 5%, not really a big deal, but you never know. Alright, let's see this. So on this wave as well, what I would do if I were you is that, especially if it's Cho'Gath, or sorry, especially if it's Lee Sin, this lane is situated that they want to kind of isolate you, and you are going to be like pure bait for Morgana Q essentially. And so the way that you would play this lane is letting her shove. Traditionally, we can tell whether or not, traditionally we can kind of be aware of lane openings depending on who we're against. Yone is a melee character, meaning that he has to gap close. Even with the E, she still has that threat of Q. So she can set
Mhm.
up. So she's always going to be holding this Q in this situation, meaning that what she's ideally looking to do is she's looking to run through her wave or run through whatever, drop that huge fat W on top of this wave, and then immediately run back. And it just constantly refreshes as well, depending on what is exactly in that W. And so the way that Yone would work in this situation as well is you're not going to be able to stack your lethal tempo efficiently because Morgana's going to have that play style. And then even possibly later than that point as well, when you do go forward with that E, again, she has that Q to threaten you. So she can instantly kind of dissuade your lethal tempo stacking. So in this situation, I think it's way more efficient for you to get Conqueror. That way, if she is kind of closer to you as is, or if she doesn't have the black shield up, you can at least go for a little bit of prolonged fighting and then have some sustainability. Conqueror
Mhm.
versus Lethal Tempo. Lethal Tempo is good onto champions that are melee or really close ranged, meaning that you can stack it. Conqueror, it's kind of the same way, but it's extended. Conqueror is going to be really efficient into mages or like burst mages. So when we're talking about like Zoe, Vagar, Victor, champions that typically are going to try to burst us, we have the Immortal Shield Bow, meaning that we get lifesteal. We have our E as well that we can snap back to. So having extra AD, especially to fight those sustained fights or long distance fights, is always going to be more efficient than lethal tempo, which is just going to fall off. Especially since, excuse me, I keep burping. I don't know why, but especially since like the meta for mid lane is like mobility. So like Vigar drops the cage, drops WQ, then he fucking bitches out and runs, right? Victor will E, use it to farm the wave, then he essentially waits for it to come back up. Like those kind of trades where it's very, very short, you don't want to have lethal tempo because you're not always going to be able to gap close versus their either one deterrence like this Morgana Q or Vagar E or Victor W or anything like that, or second, they are so fast that they are just going to be able just to run away from you. See this? Yeah, so exactly that. So she's just going to be looking just to kind of farm out and situate this wave. So it's a lot more efficient for you if you just want to get shoved in. Because, like, regardless, too, let's say that we're going to be crashing this wave here. You are at an advantage for level 2. She has 3 minions, whereas you have 5, so she's realistically only gotten 1 CS so far of XP. So the way that your wave here is situated, you're going to be double queuing this and then queuing on the back end. So it's essentially going to die in, I'd say, maybe like 6 seconds, 5 seconds-ish. That's probably an overestimate. But because you're going to have that situation where all of this wave is crashing, she can essentially just free farm with W. And so this is like super inefficient because you're going to constantly be resetting your waves. And when we're talking about the dynamic of waves as well, we like to think about the mid lane as sectors. Traditionally, you want to think about any lane as sectors, but mid lane especially, since it's the most impactful lane for junglers because there's multiple entrances, right? When we're talking about this line, this is going to be the blue side. This is going to be red. You'll have to excuse my poor writing. And then this is basically like the middle of the lane. The middle of
Yeah.
the lane is essentially going to be that break even form for any type of wave. So 6v6 or, cannon wave versus cannon wave, things like that. Essentially, whenever we're doing cheater recalls or going for a wave break, meaning that we're trying to break a freeze or anything like that, if we are not looking to control it on our end of the map here, then essentially we want, let's see, there we go. And essentially we want to make sure that we are having it in the middle of the lane at least. That way we can kind of control the tempo, especially if we situate wards and vision control. And the way that you also have vision right now is kind of inefficient. Whenever we are starting out the game, we always want to dynamically think about warding spots. Traditionally, as mid, you have a lot of options here. You can ward exactly right here. I believe that's Morgana's ward. We can ward Pixel at the start, ward Raptors to kind of track. Again, or if we know like we're against Ivern or Graves or other aggro junglers, we can even cover our own ass and then kind of ward behind us.
Mhm.
But traditionally, these are all really good spots because we want to make sure that mid lane is isolated 1v1 as long as we can get it. Okay? Even if we are not in a favorable matchup, we want to make sure that at least we're not trying to play for loss. We're trying to play for even. Because the second you
Mhm.
play for loss is when you're going to lose lane. But yeah, so going back to the wave here, we're going to shove this in, but Morgana can essentially just kind of free farm here with the W. And now it's going to crash towards her. And again, because now it's on this line here, she has full control of the wave. And now we kind of are the errand boy. And essentially, because we have no vision of either sector here, whether that's through top side or bot side, we are completely susceptible for ganks. Yone is a little bit safer than a lot of other melee mids, mainly because of his E, also his double Q, or even long past that, his ult. He has a lot of, escape tools for him, but at the same time, again, we're kind of into this like util lane where they're making sure that they're not playing for lust. They're going to try playing for these kind of setups where they can officially trade ever so often, make sure they chunk you, and then Lee Sin comes on the back end after she lands Q. Yeah, and a champion like Morgana, like I said, makes it incredibly hard for you to play in the wave because she's going to constantly be throwing the W on top of you. And because you're playing on the wave, you will have to, like, watch your minions get killed, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pause here as well. For our game, beautiful dodge. For our game here, I'll touch upon this E in a second. But for our game state, we have a Hecarim versus our Lee Sin, right? Whose setup is easier to initiate, yours or theirs?
Um, yes,
Sorry?
I guess, I mean, based on the current state, it'd be Lee Sin, I feel like,
Yeah,
and Morgana.
yeah, 100%. Because the way, again, because they're on their blue line here, whereas you have no control until you cross your red line. Even in the middle of the map, Lee Sin has full gap close onto you, whether he wants to ward hop or do some other crazy ass Lee Sin combo. Hecarim, on the other hand, has to go around and has to knock Morgana into you. And the
Mm-hmm.
main deterrent for Morgana here is that the main deterrent for Hecarim rather is Morgana has spell shield. So she can
Yeah,
essentially spell shield your double Q here. She can spell shield your ultimate. But for Hecarim, it's incredibly hard to gank this lane if we're not controlling the wave state near our tower. Because when we're controlling it, at least then we can try to go forward. We control the wave enough that we can constantly stack double Q, bait out the E, and then call it in chat and say, yo, Hecarim, by the way, we have so many forms of initiation for you. You can essentially come through any aisle here if Morgana is stuck underneath your tower. And then you
right.
can fully play aggro up. But like in a situation like this, Lee Sin's kind of a dumbass here, but you're also playing it pretty good. But like traditionally, we want to make sure that it's set up for early jungle aggression. And the way that your wave is going to bounce here in a second as well is like, it's going to probably bounce out to like right here. So you're gonna have enough you're gonna have enough control on your wave. But now we're in a situation where 315 crab is spawning. Lee Sin just needs Morgana to roam, just needs to Q scuttles once, and then the shield is down. And then she can also kind of follow up with Hecarim, like if Lee Sin is fighting Hecarim or something like that.
Yeah.
And like since Hecarim is going aggro like this as well, he's coming through that line. We want to make sure that we are fully providing enough space and enough resources that if there is a collapse from, I don't know who this is top, if there is a collapse from Cho'Gath, that we can cover. The way that the wave is pushing right now means that Morgana's going to be the first one there. We have no push.
Mm-hmm.
And if Cho'Gath covers and they collapse, then Hecarim's dead because he has no flash. He has Ghost. That was a good E, by the way. Instead of dodging sideways, what you could have done is kind of like you dodged exactly horizontal. We could have dodged vertically. That way that we kind of get closer and we don't need to do this like awkward movement up. And we still get touch on the wave. Because like we're just wasting time here if we just dodge horizontally. But again, that's like super niche. You get more comfortable with that as you play Yone. This is still fine. This is still fine. At this point, since Hecarim is on the top side as well, you should try to shove this in as soon as possible. So don't even worry. Pop your pot and then just immediately shove. Yeah, and they have free path here. Because again, Lee Sin doesn't really need a lot here. She might flash forward Q. Okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. It's kind
So
of
my thought
messed up.
here was, I think I was trying to stall so I could get a third Q off whenever I got back.
Yeah. But this is what I'm talking about, right? Not tracking jungle.
Hmm.
We know that Lee just killed. I think that was Jin alone in the bot lane. We need to play with respect, and we need to assume that since she's setting up here, this is a util lane. Whether this is Morgana, Lissandra, Veigar, we need to play with enough respect that we recognize, maybe it's time to back up. And then what we can do is efficiently, even if we want to back up towards our tower, we can move to these lines here and then ward effectively, so that we're kind of covering our own basis. Because even if Lee Sin does cross, he's still crossing on your minion wave here, and so you have vision as he kind of crosses through mid upwards, the Set or Hecarim.
Right.
So you're not really in threat of dying here. The only way that you'd be in threat of death is if she flash Qs. But at that point, even if she flash Qs, let's say flashes upwards here, and then throws a Q at you, or just basically throws a Q as is from this situation, what you can do is just flash. That way you guarantee your safety. You'd rather flash than give up gold here in this matchup because, again, she's going to have a stronger push than you, especially when she does stack those AP items. As
Right.
well as, like, if you flash up, that means that Set might have enough time to roam down because Set is towards the top side. And so we're
Hmm.
basically stalling that way. We're not really looking to like throw out our Q and stall through Q. Because I believe you just used your double Q too.
No, I think I had stacked one on.
Yeah, you did.
Did
So
I?
you're looking. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. So you're looking for here, and then you double Q. But by the time you do that, like, yeah, the fight's just so awkward. And now she has full leeway too, just to like ignite you, or just drop a
Hmm.
W on you or something. Oh, and then we panic ignite too. We don't need to panic. So even if we're in a situation where we do get caught, let's say that this is a Malzahar level 6, he flashes forward, uses ignite. There's no way for us to survive. Just keep your sums. You'd rather keep your sums than just risk death. Obviously, in that last situation, as I said, you should flash to mitigate the death. But if it's like this, where you know you're out, there's no way that this guy's gonna die at all from 80% HP. We just don't want to panic, because now this means that the next time that we bring Morgana down to a sensible amount, we are not in a situation to ignite and take care of it. We need to fully look on the play. And yeah, you essentially just die to ignite here. And what she can do here is just drop a fat W on this wave, and then you lose that entire wave. Speed this off. Let's see. Boots is fine by here, by the way. You also could have just went for null magic mantle if you had enough gold. This is so troll from Hecarim. Oh, but it's working. She was AFK. Um, I don't know what the fuck that was. Yeah, so you just want to shove. Yep. Hecarim really trolled that. Nice. Don't stop her back. Nice. Okay, we need to make sure that on this situation where she's nowhere to be seen, we know that she doesn't have any type of mobility to come back into the lane or TP. We want to trim the wave. It sounds really troll, but at this point as well, level 4, you only have Doran's Blade. There's no way that you're gonna get a plate off by yourself in that small pocket window. At most, you're gonna do like 1/4 of, yeah, that's pretty generous. 1/4 of like that plate damage. So we'd rather get the gold for this wave instantly back, so we get a cheater recall, so it bounces back in the middle of the lane here. And then we also can make sure that the tower is strictly hitting these minions, because the minions will bring this tower down. And so it'll essentially kind of equal out where you get the gold for these minions, your minions naturally will take out that 1/4 plate, and then the tower is just completely isolated and making sure that it kills this wave as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because like we're just like walking back and forth, and like we're not really accomplishing anything off of that. Excuse me, I'm burping again. There's no way that we can impact top lane. I'm
Hmm.
assuming that was a situation where you started looking for like where you could roam, but there's no way to like impact this right now unless you have 6, because he can instantly knock you up as you approach. He can silence you, meaning that you can't even get your second Q off, or at least it'll be delayed. There's no way for um, Gwen to follow up on this, because like she has to cut through an entire wave, and since she's down CS, she's just not going to do that.
Yeah.
And like bot lane as well. Like it's an Ezreal. There's not much you're gonna be able to do unless level 6. Let's speed this up. Nice, nice. Cutting the wave. Nice. We take that and then we just insta back. Better to back here because then we're also going to be on tempo for her as she pushes that wave in. The longer we stay here, the more time there is for Lee Sin just to cover. Because if Lee Sin comes from around, comes from this side, we have no knowledge because we don't have vision control still. And we never want to hoard wards. We have 2 wards right now. We want to dynamically place them again. So we're tracking these jungle inputs. We're tracking roams. Morgana's not really a roamer, but let's say it's a Talon, a TF, things like that, where they can efficiently roam. We want to make sure that we are covering port points, meaning that if the Talon is over the wall, I know exactly which path he's going down bot. Or if TF is moving towards top side, I know exactly where he's going towards top. Because, yeah, now the wave is also going to stack in the middle, just like I said. But now we're awkwardly standing here where, like, as opposed to, like, we just got hella gold. So, like, at this point... Oops. At this point, we're sitting on 591. We can get a Null Magic Mantle for 450 and then go for, like, 2 pots. Or even 3 if we want to kind of greed and sit in base. We can go for 3 pot or refillable. And that's going to be super efficient because not only is that going to mean that her W does less damage, now we have a lot more sustainability in this lane. When you go lethal tempo, we don't have enough sustainability in those fights because they're not prolonged fights. You know, maybe if we're talking about the concept of Conqueror in this game, we might get a little bit of healing. Even then, we need to make sure that the base of our healing is coming from pots because we are naturally going to get shoved out. And this little sucker here is going to be trying to buy Liandry's more than likely, just to kind of burn out on waves and just constantly force them out. So the sooner the better that we can kind of get in lane and then also proactively look to roam. Because yeah, now we're doing this like awkward tango and we're up 500 gold essentially. But again, like I said, we don't have vision control, and so these little pockets of information where Lee Sin is taking, you know, these raptors here, it's just super inefficient because now that means that if Lee Sin fights Hecarim here, he's going to be somewhat XP up, I believe, at this point. Yeah, he would be because of kills. And like this is very dangerous here as well because like we can't really effectively move here. Yep. Yeah, we don't have tempo. Lee Sin can take this and then keep fighting. Yep. And now he kills Hecarim, I think. No, you kill. Okay.
I really thought snapback would kill. But...
Well, example of the ignite. This is a situation where we could have used that ignite that you just used.
Right.
It's the same thing. When we have ignite, we're looking for kill pressure. Whether that's Talon, Zed, Yone, or any other champion that loves to get those extra kills. Because Yone with 50,000 CS, not as good as Yone with 50,000 kills. Right? We want to make sure that we're snowballing on gold efficiency items as soon as possible. And just sitting in lane CSing is all dandy and stuff, but we need to dynamically think of situations that we can impact the map. And this is a situation where we are not able to impact this soon enough because Morgana, even though her wave is exactly mid, there's no threat of her losing minions here. Right? There's only a threat if we're shoving into tower. But because we are kind of holding this wave here in the middle of the lane, she has an easier segue for Lee Sin to walk downwards, where she kind of covers towards him, and then the Hecarim is still prolonging the play. Her pathing is way faster and easier to initiate than yours, because your pathing is essentially like this, where you have that extra turn here. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but like, if you can see where I'm coming from, it kind of does. It sounds weird to explain, but you're going to be slower than her too. Even if you do have boots here, your boots naturally won't catch up because Lee Sin has that W where he can instantly jump to Morgana no matter where she is. Whether she's here on that line, here on this line, it doesn't matter. They still have that 2v1 situation where Hecarim is going to be able to cover. And there's no way if you also coming just through this line either, because then that means that Morgana just needs to Q you and then Lee Sin instantly turns his sights on you. Because Hecarim's already out of the fight. There's no way that he's going to be able to come back into that fight. And even with Set roaming up, it's just such a dirty little fight here. Okay. But because Morgana's out of lane, we want to essentially just kind of hard shove this in as soon as possible. You're going to need to stay for this wave, otherwise she freezes. Yeah, this is fine. Double Q on the wave as soon as possible. Whenever you have W, feel free to hit the back wave with it. You don't even need to use it on the front too. Just make sure that you're always using it on minions that you normally can't get to. Yeah, this is still fine. Double Q backwards, and then you'll be able to get it. Oh, just Q. Ah, good try. At least you got XP. Yeah, and now she's gonna try freezing. We need to also recognize when we're up considerably in terms of CS. So right now you're up 14 CS. There's no way that Morgana can efficiently roam either bot side or top because of just how they're kind of playing. Especially top, since Gwen will never actually get hit by the Q. But because we're up 14 CS, even though she's up a kill, we can also back, because even if she does kind of get these two here and this entire wave, that means that naturally when you come back to lane with Berserkers, I'm assuming, you're going to be on that red line so you can control this exact lane state. You're not really in a threat of losing minions here, because if anything, she's just going to constantly look to aggro push you on W, and that's exactly why she has a mana crystal. She has a tier, because she's just looking to spam that W as soon as possible. By the way, I forgot to mention, I know I talk like really fast, so if you need clarification on anything, feel free to ask her. If like you want to challenge something I'd say too, feel free to challenge. It's all up to interpretation.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're good.
Right, because now we have 1,000 gold, and essentially like 800 is going to be our Berserkers buy, and we're just like awkwardly sitting inside the lane. Like I said, her main focus is just making sure that she can constantly push with that W. And like she naturally has a better buy too. Because like, oh nice. I'm surprised that your second Q didn't hit.
Yeah, and I thought I could get away with not being in tower range there, to be honest. I just didn't realize like his ult range that
Well,
well.
even with the ult too, you're not gonna be able to kill her because you lack damage items.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, and that's like the bane of lethal tempo, where lethal tempo is mostly looking for you to use your E and go for those extended trades where you're just constantly stacking attack speed. Conqueror would be a situation like this where you're getting stacks from about everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Conqueror would also apply on your Q. Lethal tempo is just going to be giving you, excuse me, I'm so sorry, it would be giving you range on those autos on Morgana here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you just lack damage. It's more of like a limit, like knowing your limits on champions, but also like itemization. You back
Yeah.
tier got like a vampiric scepter. You don't kill, but like you'll deal like about that much more. Whereas like she's constantly looking for damage. She has about 40 extra AP, and then she also has a bunch more mana, and so she's naturally going to be able to poke you out of lane. Whereas you just have base stats,
Mm-hmm.
like base stats plus like 8 AD from Doran. And again, when we're going for those aggro fights, Conquer would give you 15.6 AD. Oops. There we go, there we go. This shoves in. And now because like our awkward base, we just lose out on that wave. And this is not really a cheater. Yeah, Berserkers. You should have just because okay. Because we're trying to go Noon Quiver here as soon as possible. You should have just held and gotten uh, a long sword. Plus, like the pink
Yeah.
doesn't really matter because you still have normal yellow wards here. So like even if we're talking about controlling like Pixel or controlling an entryway here, that's 75 gold plus your 300 for the dagger could have been easily a new longsword purchase. And like we're not stacking attack speed on Morgana because again, E Black Shield or Q or even alt later on, she's just gonna have so many deterrents for us that it makes it virtually impossible for us to constantly trigger this enough that it's gonna be beneficial for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's really no point since she's not coming close enough for us to auto. And again, the sustainability thing, you keep losing out to these kind of situations where she's just hitting that W. Like that damage seems minuscule right now, but when you're constantly sitting in the wave, it stacks up. Especially when she has tier in which she's just like throwing 50 Ws at you constantly. Like we don't have refillables and we don't have health pots. So it makes the game like or at least the lane rather, a lot more difficult, especially like later on when we're gonna try to move for objectives and we're gonna like join kind of chunked. This is good. So I liked how you initially went for this. Again, let the wave equalize out. That way we can actually get some assistance from Hecarim, who has to go from behind to get Morgana, as well as Set, who as well has to go from behind to get Morgana, with his ult at least.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're setting up for jungle or support, especially since support is like really roaming the map this game. That's mostly why you guys are losing bot and Lee Sin's getting fed, because like Jin just is not playing safe. Or not playing safe, but he's playing 2v1 too. Yeah, this is good. Morgana's not in lane. We shoved this out. We instantly roam up. Even if this fight is over, there is nothing more for us to do here, because now we're at threat of them roaming down if we do stay into the tower. So what we would do on this play is that roam up and try to cover, especially if like Hecarim is on the way here. I think what you're looking to do is looking to go bot here because Ezreal and Yuumi, but Ezreal has the mobility with his Arcane Shift, which is his E. Yuumi also has deterrence, like she can give him the zoomies, meaning that she's going to heal him, give him extra movement speed, or just use her ult, which will dramatically slow you, or in some cases CC you if you get hit by 3 waves of it.
Right.
So like you can't really go for bot here because he's also at a loss. So the way that Jin would play this lane is constantly getting shoved in, but he has to efficiently CS with Q and E. He doesn't really have a choice this game. So like bot lane is kind of playing for loss, or just playing to like mitigate loss. Whereas like we need to make sure that we are getting Hecarim ahead, or we are making sure that Gwen is still in a situation where she can win. Because Gwen, the way that Gwen is going to be played here is these two have to enter her zone. Same thing with Cho'Gath. There's no way of him constantly hitting Q on her if she has W up. So we need to make sure that these champions have a basis. And yeah, we're doing that awkward thing here. We're like, we're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, that's fine. Nice. We get plating. But now by the time Hecarim's down to that fight, it's just extremely awkward. Gonna hold this, I think. Oh, it's actually gonna push towards you. Yep. Nice, nice. We don't need to trim the wave. Okay, nice. Trying to freeze. Gonna equal out yet again. We want to try making sure that we're never like crashing it towards her tower unless we have set up or we're already winning the game, or just allowing it to equalize, because when it's equalizing, she's hitting the majority of the minions. Yeah, and again, same thing. When you go for the E, she has so many deterrents. And Morgana ult though off. Try to make your pings really fast. We don't need to sit there all day. You just need to click. Because like that's the difference between like someone killing you and someone not, right? Or like your teammates reading that info and perceiving it and not. Also, if I were you, I would also spam it. Not so much that you get muted or the system times you out, but maybe 2 to 3 times, just so that it doesn't kind of get drowned out by, you know, Hecarim bot Triforce or Set is saying missing or things like that. In mid lane, it's always a good practice when a champion is missing to spam their portrait as well as call out missing. So about 3 missing pings and then maybe like 4 portraits or 2 portraits. That way, you know, people notice chat, they can hear it audibly going off rather than just kind of question marks where they really don't know what that's for. Okay, this is good here. You should immediately start off this fight, especially if Hecarim is kind of turning on the jets. Like, when he pings, he's on the way here. Hold on. If Hecarim wants to go into this fight, let's assume that we already know where Lee is. What you should do is you should look for a line that is exactly going to give you that ult. And the second that you see Lee, by the way, you need to back up. The second you saw his Q miss, because that's exactly what happened to Hecarim here. He notices the Q, it barely nicks him and doesn't even get him. We need to instantly move back. Because let's say that we're playing in a higher elo or we're playing with more proficient players. The way that you were just right here, kind of, give or take, and then Lee Sin is like right here. He can essentially ward hop and then flash kick you back into the team. Like he obviously doesn't have flash here, but that's just a situation where we are unnecessarily close to a champion that needs, gap closing to effectively go off, and we are essentially giving that to him one way or another. Actually, is that what happens here? And now he's just gonna kick you back, yeah? He's waiting for the snapback. Yep. Yeah, we effectively just like gap close. There's no point in using ult there. Because even if you do ult, your ult stops at the first person it hits, and so you're essentially gonna move like maybe 2 feet. You're not gonna really be moving that far.
I think the idea was that if the ult went off, that they would be taking damage under tower,
Hmm.
and Hecarim might be able to clean up two of them.
Yeah,
Was
but
the
but
thought process
but
behind dropping
Cho'Gath
the
still
ult?
right, but Cho'Gath still has ult in that situation as well, where like he can just eat you.
Mm-hmm.
And like even though there is like that follow up, Cho'Gath essentially just cashes in here. They're able to shove this in. He gets a free stack. They might even go for a little bit of plating here. Yep, Cho'Gath is gonna go for plating. Damn, he goes for 2. That's a big boy. Yep. Now you're shoved out. Set might be able to turn this. But he doesn't have ult. That's so unlucky. Oh, now he does. Yeah, he wins this. Okay. Nice. We need to be placing wards because, like, this is just burning a hole in your pocket. 75 gold. You also have 2 wards here. That was your first vision score at the game, you taking this and now killing this as well. We need to make sure that because we are mid lane, we should always have third most vision score. The way that the game should work is jungle first, or sorry, support first, jungle second, mid lane third, because mid lane is also trying to play for map. But because we're in a losing situation where we know we're constantly getting actively ganked on from multiple lanes, we need to proactively think about vision control. Like we have nothing for vision control right here.
Right.
We need to ward, even if it means coming right to the edges of these like structures towards mid. We need to proactively look for vision control. Because like let's say they have pinks here in these bushes, right? Common ward spots. We at least know like where their vision lies, and so you can ping it for Hecarim or ping it for Set or ping it for whoever. This is fine. This is fine. Again, she's gonna hit you with Q. Yeah. But you see what I mean with a lethal tempo? It doesn't give you enough time that you can actually like auto attack her because she has just so many like cancerous things up her sleeve.
Yeah.
Like we're essentially like just picking it for the sake of like the off chance Lee Sin shows up or Cho'Gath. Because Ezreal can dash out. I mean Lee can dash out as well, but Cho'Gath is just kind of stuck there taking the brute force of it. Let's see how much you've done on it. Yeah, 0 seconds so far. Also, for this lane, what you should have done was instead of going, instead of going sudden impact or eyeball, what we could have done was we could have just went for the resolve tree. We can go for bone plating or revitalize. So revitalize would give
Yeah.
you 5% healing. Yone is a champion that will always buy immortal shield bow, so that's 5% extra life steal for him. His shield as well, when he has that BT later on the Bloodthirster, his shield gets fatter. His shield on immortal shield bow also gets stronger. You get 10% damage on like lifesteal abilities on champions that are 40%. So if you're effectively constantly trading on Morgana like this and you have Conqueror, it just means a lot more. And then bone plating. Bone plating is extremely, extremely important because bone plating is like the pseudo force of nature, like the old force of nature at least, where like if you constantly get hit by like let's say Timo E or something like that, eventually it's gonna fall off on damage, or eventually it's gonna feel like you're just kind of getting pelted by like beanbags rather than like darts. Um, because she's constantly throwing out her W, our bone plating is going to be effectively going off a lot. And bone plating works in the situation that like she throws down W, right? It's going to last for like 1.5 seconds, and I think it has like a 50 to 45% or 45-second cooldown or something. The next 3 attacks or abilities she's going to throw out at you are going to deal like a flat out less damage. And so that's like that's the difference between you staying in lane with no HP pots and you kind of being forced out of lane, or like Lee Sin arriving now too, after you constantly getting hit by these like W's. Because like sudden impact, we're looking just to like use that for a Q or for ult or something like that, but we really don't need that extra lethality. We're Yone. Our lethality or our burst of damage at least comes from the E. Like on that snapback, when we're converting all of that to like, I believe it's like 15% to like 30% extra damage or something. An eyeball
Doesn't
too. Sorry, go ahead.
doesn't E proc as well, sudden impact?
Yeah, so like when we're going forward. Sorry,
Yeah,
I don't know if I said that, but your Q, your E, and your ult.
yeah,
But like when we're going into like a situation like this where she's stopping us, our sudden impact is pretty useless as opposed to like nullifying the lane. Because like if we
yeah.
can go resolve, we're essentially kind of getting more sustainable and sustainability versus like a champion that's effectively trying to set up for jungler or just to constantly push you in is always going to be good. Eyeball too.
Yeah.
Eyeball's only efficient here if you're constantly looking to roam. And like because you're
Mhm.
versus Morgana, a champion that you hardly can ever crash wave into and force roams, it's not really gonna do you much good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna take a wild guess and probably say that you don't ever fill up those 10 eyeballs in the eyeball collection this game. Because there's just no way
Yeah.
for you to like actually roam. It's like right now out of 8 kills you have 0 KP because you're like more or less quote unquote a slave to the wave. Like you have to answer these waves. Or you have to answer Morgana or something else. Like you can't just like say fuck this and then start roaming. Because like also your lanes are not lanes that you can roam either.
Mhm.
And these are things that like we want to think about when we see like their draft. When we're looking at their draft and when we notice Ezreal. I can't really impact bot lane unless I have ult or I know Ezreal's E is off cooldown or other factors as well. I can't really look top, especially if Gwen is going to get shoved in by Cho or if Cho is just going to be so beefy that he essentially can just nullify all my damage. That was fine to roam. I don't think you really had to go get like drag with Hecarim. But like that's fine because you guys don't know where Lee is. Nice. And now you just back. And again, the wave is is going to equalize here. Yeah, mid lane is all about knowing how waves bounce, what we do in the lane, how it's going to impact the wave. Because if you don't have proper lane or wave management, again, you're a slave to the wave and you can't do anything. Even if you do pick
Yeah,
Talon.
that's
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's something that I've definitely been struggling with in general with mid because the wave management is completely different than the longer lanes.
Yeah, because when
And
we're
so
talking
like
about. Go ahead.
I can set up like wave management a lot better in the long lanes just because I know how those minions work more.
Mm-hmm.
Or like how many minions it takes to keep the wave in like a certain spot. But in mid lane, it's like such a short lane, and I just like it's really different, and I'm still adjusting.
Yeah, and mid lane too, you're going to proactively be looking to roam, and that's exactly why you have so many points of entry into your lane. It's just a dynamic lane. You know, mid lane is you want to get individual prowess or individual success, and then look to snowball that out into like the greater side lanes. And for mid lane, because the waves are just super super fast, like mid lane, the wave always arrives faster to mid lane because it's a direct path rather than like a side lane. And so you need to make
Mhm.
sure that you're able to like check yourself and see whether or not a loss is warranted for a certain amount of CS or if you can effectively get things out of that as well. You had a flash. You could have flashed to the side. Here's FF. I think this is a FF.
Yeah.
All right, this is fine. We're getting shoved in here. Cho already took down 2 plates, and now unfortunately Ezreal has also roamed, so there's not much we can do here. If we're playing to scale, as Yone's in this situation should be, we are essentially just looking just to farm out on some like minor camps if Hecarim can afford to give them. If you're in comms, this is a perfect time for you to ask, hey, can I get wolves? Well, they're kind of controlling that wave, and then you just approach that wave as like Hecarim covers mid or something. This is well, like, yeah, just back up. This is fine. This is fine.
Right here, I was just trying to kind of catch XP and
Yeah, this is fine.
a minion or
You
two if I could.
you do need to be wary still of Lee Sin.
Yeah.
Like here, we can let Jin touch it, but we can't do it ourselves. Nice dodge. The second he situates like this, by the way, the second he pops his ghoster, you hear the E. Immediately E alt. like your E is going to gap close to right here, and then you ult on that solid line, and you basically have all 4 in your ult. And then that way Jin can also free hit. Because right now we're going to be delayed here because we had to walk, then E, and then ult. Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. And by the time you do that, they leave. And again, the lethal tempo situation where, you know, we're not stacking lethal tempo at all. Sure, we didn't land anything, but let's assume you did land some abilities. You don't have any like situation to continue the fight here because like they're all super mobile here. And so like there's really no good in us getting attack speed as opposed to just flat AD on these champions. Trade here, nice, 1-for-1, but you're basically on a solo mission. Yeah, it's risky to do that. I get it. It's a desperation play because you're trying to make sure that Hecarim's death isn't for vain. But at the same time, it's just better just to like not die and use your summons like that. Because like you basically flash ignited and then double E'd. Where like sure you get Morgana, but at the same time now you don't have it to set up the next, you know, huge wombo combo with your ult.
Mm-hmm. I think the thought process there, I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember this game, but I think my thought was that Yumi was on Lee Sin, and I got Morgana, but was trying to. I ignited Lee Sin and was trying to hope that the knockup Jin would open ult, and then we clean up that way, like a second kill. Because I didn't want Lee Sin healing, that's why I dropped Ignite.
Mm.
And the thoughts that maybe Jin could pop a kill, but
Seems like one of those plays where if it goes bad, you guys FF. Second she throws out E, just sorry, the second she throws out Q, if you can either flash or just E to the side. Because there's no point, because now you are isolated in this situation, and like it's just extremely awkward here. And then plus after the fight's done, just back up. The second you see Ezreal ult, just back the hell up, because he's not looking to kill you with it. He's looking to set up follow up. And like this dragon is a drag that we can give, because like we are extremely chunked here from Set and yourself. That was kind of late. We want to make sure that we're not going for Lee Sin, who again has W, who has mobility. We want to make sure that we can isolate and catch people off because we have full vision of the situation. We want to make sure that we are going for champions that not necessarily are on the way down, but are on the way up. Because they are going to be looking at these two rather than whoever the hell is over the wall. Like Lee Sin naturally is kind of on paranoid alert here. Like Lee Sin has these two to worry about, and like you're coming over the wall as is. And so naturally, because he sees the 2v1 situation, he's running down and he's going to wait for the rest of his team. And plus, like I said, Morgana's util, meaning that Morgana's going to look to set up. And that's exactly what she does here. Yep. And like Set is going to die here. Oh, actually, Set just brought Lee Sin to you.
yeah, that one was kind of...
Okay. Yeah, and now Jin just like rage FFs.
Yeah, pretty much.
So biggest takeaway from this game, we need to dynamically think about lane states and itemization, and then possibly runes as well. But mostly, I would say it's lane states. The main issue is, again, we need to think about how to mitigate keeping it in the central point or towards their tower where they can effectively freeze, especially towards better opponents. Sure, we're playing on new accounts and stuff like that, but as you do grow, and I'm sure that you're going to eventually hit a level of like probably silver or gold or something like that, there's going to be situations where they're going to be able to control on that blue axis, or they're going to be able to control the wave state, whether that's exactly above this line, so like situated right here, below it, or exactly on top of it. As long as it's not hitting the tower, that wave is theirs. And when we're talking about the middle of the lane as well, if we do want to play constantly for middle on these waves, we need to make sure that we dynamically are warding. Don't hoard wards. Better to drop a pink and let it be destroyed than it is just to keep it in your pocket and let it burn. Because like there's no point in mid-game warding if we didn't ward out in the beginning. We need to make sure that we're tracking jungle in the beginning, especially if we're playing a util or setup lane like Morgana, Veigar, Syndra, you know, champions like that. As well, when champions have like cookie cutter builds are essentially like builds that you'll see on those websites and stuff like that. When they have cookie cutter builds, we need to think about, you know, what can I change out of this cookie cutter build to fit my situation? Because effectively, you know, usually Yones will kind of go either cut down or last stand. Last stand is going to be like when you are below a certain threshold, you deal more damage and things like that. But let's say that they have a lot of tanks. last stand might not be as effective as cut down because cut down is pretty much, that free LDR for you.
Right.
So we need to be thinking about these things consciously. If Morgana has a Q that stops us and an E that doesn't allow us to get going, then we need to think about maybe it's not the best if I'm playing, an attack speed situated style. Because like the way that you were playing is excuse me, I'm so sorry. I keep burping. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
But you E forward, you Q, and that's about it, right? We're not going for those extended trades. We're not looking for like you're going in, you're queuing, you're autoing 50,000 times, and then you're Wing. No, that's not really how we're playing this lane. We need to make sure that
Right.
we're effectively just kind of going in, Eing forward, Q poke, even the W. We need to be a lot less frugal on holding the W. Sure, we get a fat shield, but at the same time, it's the difference between Morgana landing W on you and her poking you out, or you poking her out. If we have W and we are able to hit Morgana with it, feel free to use it on Morgana rather than the wave. We can effectively clear the wave with Q, which goes through about a couple of minions so long as they're close enough, or we can even look to use our empowered Q. And we don't really need to think about W as that like, this is going to be able to hit that back wave, or this is going to be able to hit, the minions that are closest to me and are able to kill them a lot faster.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I know I said a lot there, but
No, it's all good.
yeah, it's like situations like that. You know what I mean? Like we need to effectively think about these things, and we need to make sure that we are dynamically thinking about these things, because sometimes, even the smallest couple of mistakes kind of bleeds into our playstyle or bleeds into the way that, our next couple games are going to work. Even if not, it's not necessarily a permanent thing. We want to make sure that we're mitigating bad fundamentals rather than letting them fester for a little bit. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Makes sense.
I don't know if I have a lot of time to go over like a second game though. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's kind of late.
Yeah, no, I need to get over to my team anyway. We're gonna do some scouting for our game this week.
I know worries. All right. So does that kind of make sense then for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably rewatch this again tomorrow or something, just to like before I get into a game. That way I can kind of focus on some individual things.
Yeah.